the list for questions to staff. You are up.
I did bring one which came up repeatedly, both in letters and in people speaking to us. And I think people less meant losing the actual structure than their way of life in terms of light in their backyard or even in their windows, quiet, privacy, and financial issues. And I think part of the problem is they don't feel that sacrifice, that change in their world is being acknowledged as something that's important or something that anybody would even care about. And I'm just wondering if the city has a way of mitigating or acknowledging that massive change for the group of people who do live close to the arterials. And if perhaps you could explore that a little, because I think there's a lot of the anger we hear and frustration is expressed because people don't feel acknowledged in that way. So perhaps you could help me there.
Through the chair, Councillor Bell, there were two issues of fear that I heard with respect to that particular issue. One, I do think you're absolutely right in terms of fear of other types of buildings crowding them out, and the assurance we can give them is the kind of urban design work that we do, the detailed urban design policies and guidelines that are contained in each of the plans and the public realm plans that are prepared for each of the plans, to assure them that we carefully consider transitions, access, and issues of access and landscaping and all of those, to make sure that the new forms of housing are basically blend in with the existing single family. But I did hear a second point with respect to that fear, and with what people kept saying over and over and over again was the rezoning plan, the rezoning plan, the rezoning plan. Or that developers somehow would drive down the value of their prices, as opposed to a rezoning, which would actually likely offer more opportunities and likely increase the value of their homes, which led to another fear that they had, which was about increased taxes coming along with that increased value. So there was a number of different fear factors, but you're right, one of them was associated with design.
So it's kind of a snowballing of fear.
That's correct. My
life is being changed radically, and it doesn't matter to me if my property's worth more. I don't want to move, but I'm being forced to move because my neighbor's selling, etc. Yeah. So I think probably just even the acknowledgement of those issues in workshops would be extraordinarily helpful to people, so that once they hear, yes, the city's working on their side, and perhaps there are other things that we can look at in terms of people's gardens and other things that would make things more possible for people.
Absolutely.
I'll look forward to the ideas.
Thank you.
Oh, yes. Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Carr.
Yes, thank you. I did send two more questions. Did you get those? And I did have one additional one, but if you wouldn't mind the two, that would be great. Thank you.
Through the chair, the second question is, where did the idea of a citizens' assembly for Grandview Woodland come from? That came from the Engaged City Task Force. It was one of the ideas for alternative ways of consulting the public and involving the public in a more democratic way, in some people's view of the engagement process. And with respect to Marpole, I'll turn it over to my.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Mr. Mayor, members of Council. Your other question, Councillor Carr, was are the projects recently approved of or proposed for the Marpole area, including Marine Gateway, Safeway site on Granville, Langara Gardens, Pearson Lands, being counted in terms of the Marpole area reaching their target of increased population? The Safeway project is under construction, the Marine Gateway project, and all of the other development that could occur under what Council has already approved in the Canby Corridor Plan, Phase 2, are all included in those numbers. The Pearson Dogwood site, a number on the existing zoning is included. The existing duplex zoning estimates 2,000 people on the site. And for Langara Gardens, no, they're not included. Langara Gardens is not in Marpole. It's north of Marpole, being north of 57th Avenue.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Chang.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And first of all, I want to thank you for bringing the various presentations of the Mythbusters part. I think that was very important. And I think it was what you gave us today when you collected all the packages up and you started to read some of the things out. You know, I'd always suspected there was a lot of misinformation out there, and I'd actually said that a few times because I was talking to members of the Chinese community, and they were like, where'd you get that from? And I'm still getting emails saying that we're doing this or doing that. So I think it's really important that that comes out. So on that, you did mention earlier on that as we go forward, that you would be actually refuting these and actually making it very clear. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's absolutely key at the very next open house. We've got to have, before people even walk in the room, you know, information in either Mandarin or Cantonese. I'm not sure which is the predominant language.
The written's the same.
Yeah.
But certainly, so you do it right away, make sure everybody's on the same page before they go forward. Oh, that's great. And other stuff that we've collected, you know, we'll be able to do flyers or something like that in future to really clarify all these things, because I think, you know, when I talk to members of the Chinese community, you know, sometimes things get lost in translation too, because, you know, different tone or inflection means quite a different word. I got a lot of listening to speakers coming, so it was a very good. You know, if you are getting the same kind of sense as I am, this is my question. We're seeing a lot of very angry people, very, you know, you use the words, almost a form of hysteria. And as a psychologist, you know, I was watching people and trying to understand where it was coming from. And I got the sense that, you know, it's almost a mother bear instinct. You know, they've spent a lot of money and time on their properties. It's not cheap, you know, and, you know, people are stretched. And all of a sudden, when there's any kind of change that kind of invades your space, all of a sudden your defenses go up. And I think we have to acknowledge that. I don't know if you kind of picked that up as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think we have to acknowledge that, because, you know, people did spend a lot of money and time on their places. We have to make sure that their, you know, environment or whatever their universe, you know, is not affected, not unduly affected, but certainly, if it is, to make absolutely clear what the implications are. Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Mayor Robertson.
I'm ready to move a motion when we're ready. I didn't know if Councilor Carr just came on with more questions, or.
Okay, now we got a couple other councillors.
We do, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Carr, you've got about 2.5 minutes left.
One more, thank you, Madam Chair. There was a difference in response back in some of the questioning and responses that we had earlier regarding the consultation that you anticipate with the Grandview Woodlands community around, for example, what a citizens' assembly might look like or forms of engagement might look like. And one response was, I think, Mr. Jackson, you said that you'd be open to discussing broadly with the community and really working with the community towards that. And there was another response that said that the anticipation would be the consultation would be with PACE, the one. And so I'm wondering which one it is.
It's actually going to be both. That we're going to reach out there. Assembly may be one form. Are appropriate. So we'd like to sit down with the people of Grandview Woodlands, people who spoke, Mr. King and some of the others, and work out a process where everybody can participate in for their community.
Okay, and would that include the actual initial discussions of actually how that engagement?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So right from the beginning, it wouldn't just be with PACE; it would be with other people.
Oh, yeah,
who
absolutely.
Have come here who have from major
like the GWAC people.
Like,
yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
All right. I just needed that clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Stevenson.
Oh, thanks. I just had an interesting and helpful conversation with Councillor Ball, and listening to Councillor Chang kind of triggered this. There's no doubt that a lot of people are anxious because they have put a lot of work and bought property and so on. But I don't want to forget, and I'm sure, I know you're going to assure me that you don't forget about 50% of the population who rent. Not many of them come out to the police because they don't feel they have the same say, or we don't get to them because the mail-out's not there, but they're going to be affected by all of this as well. And I think somehow we have to make a special effort for renters. Almost we have to represent them in ways that they aren't themselves,
Right.
When we carry on with this.
Right,
They'll have a lot of anxiety, but not for the same reasons
Right.
as the owner.
Yeah. And Councillor Stevenson, you'll hear in response to another question that came up from I think it's Councillor Reimer about the number of responses we got back from renters in early on in the MARPOL process versus most recently, and it really is quite shocking, the difference, and you'll hear that later on.
Oh, good. Okay.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stevenson. Mayor Roberts, did you put yourself back on? Oh, no, Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm ready to move a motion. I have sent a motion with some additional language included in it and added to it to the clerk. And I will just speak to the overall first and foremost. I want to thank everyone in Vancouver who has been involved in these 4 community plans. There's been an enormous amount of input and commitment of residents' time, people that participated in almost 4 over these 2 in 4, and we had lots of input over these past couple of days. People who showed up, people who sent in emails, wrote letters, even folks that came to rally this week, and we appreciate that. Everyone sharing their passion for our city. We heard a lot of passionate comments about people who love their homes, love their neighborhoods, and we take that to heart. There, I think, have been valid concerns about the process. This is a big, challenging process for decades of our ahead in our neighborhoods, and so it's obvious there's always room for improvement in this. Whether it's how the information is shared and communicated, the different forms of engagement. But I do, noting that there's room for improvement, I want to really thank our staff for the work that they've done to take this to the next level. I think our staff have been in a lot of best practices and really done an extraordinary amount of work over these past several years so that we can have there was a backlog of this, I think, for many years. A couple years ago, we heard a lot of concern and conversation about the lack of long-term plans in neighborhoods and the lack of affordability. That's been a huge crunch in our city. And this is an important time for us to long-term neighborhoods that don't have them. And I think our staff did an exemplary job, a professional job, and represented the city well at hundreds of meetings, engaging the community. I was extremely disappointed to hear some of the negative commentary about our staff, and I thank the chair for pointing that out in this meeting today. Our staff work so hard. I think many of the speakers did mention that respect for the workload and our staff's passion for the city. I think we need to get beyond this the slagging that goes on, and that's most unfortunate through this, because I think we've got a lot of work we've got ahead of us in these 4 neighborhoods and then beyond that. So it's important that we make progress on ensuring people feel respected, and that certainly starts with our staff as they try to do their best work on behalf of the city. It is easy to forget why we're doing this. Ultimately, it is about ensuring that we have more housing affordability That's what comes up number one again and again in neighborhoods throughout Vancouver. The way that we can address that over a longer period of time is through these community plans and ensuring that the city's policies and guidelines going forward enable communities to maintain their character, but also ensure that everyone has an opportunity to grow. That we have a huge amount of population growth here in Vancouver and across the region that we are struggling to accommodate while maintaining affordability. So the big picture is a challenging one, but I think a lot of good work has been done within these communities to provide opportunities for affordability and growth, and that's something I'm thankful for. We can't afford the need for affordable housing in Vancouver. We got to address it, and I think these plans in their current form are getting there. But the process ahead is really important. So I'll just speak to the points. Basically, moving the 4 recommendations with a few changes built into them. Starting in A, with the downtown east side, it's extending the deadline to January the 31st, recognizing that we heard from our area planning team that they need a little more time to review. I think we heard that from Mr. Spaxman, from our general manager, Mr. Jackson, that it makes sense to do that. So we put January 31st in, and definitely the work that's been done on the downtown east side has been remarkable, and it's fantastic to see it so close to being completed when very few predicted that several years ago. But I think we're almost there, but that extension makes absolute sense. The second change is in D, and that is with Marpole. Maybe before I get to Marpole, because in C we reference the West End, I'll say congratulations to the West End and the amazing work that was done there, because I don't think there's any change needed. It's on track. We've had a lot of positive feedback on that, and again, it's a pleasant surprise given a lot of challenges in the West End with growth and members of the community, the thousands of people in the West End who were involved. On Marpole, I've got changes included in D, and the first is that we extend the consultation period to the end of March, no later than March 31st, so that gives an extra, 6 months from now to work on the remaining details. There's a key piece that I want to add here further, that the area shown as 2 in map 2, that's the proposed revisions to draft Marpole Community Plan, be changed to 1. And basically that means including the neighborhood that was identified as area 2 in the single-family home neighborhoods that are known as 1 in that plan. I think we heard a lot of concerns raised by residents in that neighborhood that they wanted to maintain the neighborhood as single-family homes, and I think they made a strong case for that. So in moving forward, I think we need to shift that particular area into the single-family home designation. We heard a lot of concerns about Marpole being broken up into pieces, and I think this is an important statement for council to make, to say, no, it is a single-family home neighborhood. That said, I add another piece further, that staff, as part of Phase 3 of the Cambie Corridor planning process to commence in 2014, examine an appropriate way to buffer the single-family area to the west of Cambie and the already approved 6-story zoning policy on Cambie Street. That recognizes that along Cambie is already zoned for 6 stories, and we do need a buffer between that 6 stories and the single-family home neighborhood, a way to step down into the neighborhood that makes sense, recognizing that the designation of that neighborhood on Cambie Street. So the next piece is the final one related to Grandview Woodlands. And that's in E, first of all, that it is directing staff to extend the schedule for the plan for a minimum of 12 months. I think we heard pretty consistently that it's going to take at least a year to bring forward the Citizens Assembly idea and to really restart the process in Grandview Woodlands and ensure that it's done right and that we get the best wisdom from the neighborhood through a rigorous and broad planning process going forward and implement, I think, a creative new approach to doing that. So an extension of a minimum of 12 months. The final piece that is a new addition as F is that council directs staff to work with the Kettle Friendship Society, Bothwell Properties, other potential partners, and the community to explore development options for the Commercial and Venables proposal that would significantly reduce the proposed height of the development while maintaining the expanded Kettle program and maximizing the number of supportive housing units. And this speaks to a really challenging spot where there's concern about the height of a new development that will enable the Kettle Friendship Society to have a new, much-needed facility. I know the community has a fair bit of tension around what exactly happens there. A lot of the concern is around height. So this is direction to staff to come back with a solution that they believe will work in the community, that brings the height down and still provides the opportunity for Kettle to grow into that larger space that they desperately need to serve people in the community of mental health services. So hopefully there's a solution there that we see rather than far. Case well made, so we need to move that one along. Hopefully staff find a great solution for that they bring back to council for us to consider. And finally, that the staff report back by the end of 2013 on this. So that's over these next 3 months to come back on this as part of the interim rezoning policy in Grandview Woodland. So that's the set of changes. Most of the language as recommended by staff is intact, but a few tweaks based on the input that we've had over the past several days. And again, I want to appreciate the work that's been done. I think it's been an extraordinary process and a huge workload for our staff and for the many citizens, the thousands of people who have participated over the last several years, and really important for us in these months ahead to keep things focused, make sure we deliver solutions as soon as possible in the neighborhoods that are under great strain for growth and affordability, and also ensure that we're making the right decisions for the long term, for the decades to come. So with that, look forward to having unanimous support of council. I know we'll make a really good statement about
to Councillor. Okay. I will move us to an amendment queue, so you will need to hit your button again.
My amendment can replace motion, and the reasons for it are this. First of all, may I start by first of all thanking our staff for their work to date and their work in preparing this report, but their work to date on the plans. I think under the very tight timelines we've had, it's been very stressful and difficult. At times, I recognize that, and the community does as well. I'd also very much like to thank the people who have come to speak to us and recognize that our management of time in terms of them not knowing exactly when they would be speaking, I think has made it very difficult. I've read every email that's been sent to me. I also have attended community meetings in all of the 4 communities, and out of that, especially out of the emails, which I think better reflect the range of opinion and the solidity of opinion around some issues, I have forwarded the strike and replace motion that I believe captures what people have been saying to us. In the case of the first A, that the draft downtown east side plan be deferred for 6 months, because it's not just an issue of reviewing 90 pages of information. There are other issues that have been raised. If you read the letters that have come in, for example, from the Strathcona Residents Association, the most recent online survey approval of that plan was only at 25% of the draft approval for the draft plan. 75% said that it wasn't satisfactory. I think that takes more time to discuss within the community in a very broad, much broader way and a timelier way. I've talked to individuals who have said 6 months would be a far more reasonable. With respect to the draft West End plan, I'm also suggesting 6 months. Again, that's after discussions with the community. With all due respect, Councillor Stevenson, I was at the meeting in August. 250 people attended. They were not happy with the plan. They were not happy with the process. They wanted much more time. They felt that, just like the people in Grandview Woodland who felt that features of land use and zoning got landed on them without expectation or previous discussion. The people in the West End raised at that meeting many times. They didn't know where the 30 to 60 stories came from. They didn't know where the high-rise development on the water end of Davie Street came from. And they are asking also for more time. Like, I think all of the groups want a different process. I'll get to that in a second. Not exactly the same as we've had. I've asked for a year for a MARPOL because that is what the community has asked for. That was the single most common response back to the question of how long do you think equity, with Grandview, a year is what's needed. A deal of concern around the sharing of information and the degree to which they need to, as a community, continue to discuss the draft in front of them. And regarding Grandview Woodland, again, I've asked for 1 year, and because they said they want that vote prior to the next election. They don't want to see it extended beyond the next election because they worry about the kind of scenario that happened with 1401 Comox, where, something happened before the election that gave people confidence that maybe it wouldn't be approved, and right after the election, that proposal was approved. So, I really feel F that I think really captures what many people have been saying to us, that they want staff to work with them to provide recommendations on how to improve the process going forward. Person after person said to us, it's not just extending the timeline. It's doing something different in terms of the way in which we conduct the planning process. They want a collaborative process. They want improved information sharing. Further, I've asked that staff in that report create a budget for the enhanced public consultation, including funding for additional forms of engagement as requested by the communities. It wasn't the community that requested Citizens Assembly. They may be fine with it. But I'd like to see what the community suggests. They have suggested working groups, joint management team. So I'm suggesting have that conversation, come back to us, put it with a budget, and that this be presented to us as quickly as possible. I'm suggesting 2 months because we need to get on with the plans themselves. So I very much hope that you will recognize in my motion the respect that I think it engenders or that it reflects for the variety and the strength of opinion that has come forward to us, both in written form and in terms of speakers to this original motion report.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Affleck.
Chair. Yeah, I'll support this. I think Councillor Carr's put a lot of thought into this, especially related to what's happened over the last few days here and what we've been feeling in Marpole, certainly as one of the community plans I'm part of, and Councillor Carr in the West End certainly has got her finger on the pulse there as the liaison there. I think that there's a definite sense out there for a reset button to a certain degree on this. For the long term. So Councillor Carr's strike and replace here, I think, is really fits what I think we've been hearing the last 3 days and would solve a lot of the issues. I don't think it strays too far from what the intent of what we're trying to do here, but I think it would create a strategy for us to improve the process and to engage the citizens of the city in a positive way, who will then have buy-in on all 4 plans, and that we can then move forward over the next 30 years and build our city so that everybody will be behind it. So I'll support this. Thank you.
Councillor Reimer.
Well, it's a difficult position because it's presented as a whole motion, so there might be pieces of it that are interesting, but because it, in its entirety, is what I feel is a much more thoughtful, responsive approach in the original motion, it's difficult for me to support it. I would say a few things here that, like Councillor Carr, and I'm hoping every member of council, I think without saying, we've all read every email. I believe the text we get, we talk to people out in community. We all, to the best of my knowledge, I run into a lot of you out in the community. So I'm guessing we're all in that position. And I not at any time now, or certainly to me, it's not a 3-day discussion that we've been having. It's been going on many years, actually, which was when these 3 communities pushed hard to get plans going, 4 communities, pardon me, the 3 next community plans as well as the downtown east side. I have at no time over this last 3 months heard a uniform ask for a cookie cutter approach. I have heard people begging us to listen to their care, concern for their community and offer them a plan and planning process that responds to the unique attributes of each community. And that's not cookie cutters that we just slam down on these processes. Do you feel it's a very, very difficult community to plan in, and the Strathcona Residents Association, for that reason, was given a mandatory seat at the table. That committee was appointed by community groups, but we insisted that the Strathcona Residents Association be given a seat, which they chose not to take. They absented themselves from the plan for over a year. So for them now to be asking for more time is a bit challenging, right? It can't just be written off, and efforts have been made. It's great to see them now at the table, but it's very hard for me to accommodate them when they chose to not involve themselves in the plan for such a great period of time. So I think it was summed up best by the one out of the 2 speakers we heard from the West End. Will we hear anything different from anyone new? And at this point, I'm not, like you, Councillor Carr, spend a lot of time in the West End and around the community, and not hearing new things from you people. I appreciate there are historical and ongoing lack of agreement in some areas, but I think there's a point where you need to advance that discussion. Grandview Woodland, without seeing the Citizens Assembly, and I do take exception to the characterization that the concept of the Citizens Assembly didn't come from the community. It came from a task force of representatives, more people than came to speak to us from outside the communities that we're discussing today, and they have equally valid points of view. So I'm not willing to choose one community over another community, other than to say that I think there's an opportunity here to merge the two. As to how long it will take to design an innovative, before tried form of deliberative democracy and community planning, I'm not prepared to put that number down today. And in Marpole, I did not hear the most common problem being the timeline. I heard the most common problem being Area 2 not being a 1. Sorry, and I know everyone in this room understands that, and I apologize to those who might be trying to follow this, but essentially people living in single-family point of dragging people through 12 months if we're prepared today to do what they wanted to do that 12 months, and I'm quite happy to support that. So I will be supporting the original motion.
Thank you, Councillor Reimer. Councillor Meggs.
I can't add too much to what Councillor Reimer has said, except that I find it strange that where we've had a lot of submissions that people are ready to implement their plans, Councillor Carr's motion would delay that implementation. Where people have said they're not certain how long it should take, she's imposing deadlines. It's got to be done in 2 months, and some work has to be done in 2 months. Some work must be absolutely concluded before the civic election, whether it's ready or not. So I find it internally contradictory, and I think that it also, ironically, completely ignores the advice of staff who the debate began with by praising. So I think that staff's insights here are valuable, and they have a good grasp of what's been happening in the communities. Mr. Jackson's eloquently explained how he wants to deal with some of the gaps in information in the community, and I think we should take their lead on that and let them go forward on that basis.
Thank you, Councillor Meggs. Those are all the people I have on the amendment queue, so we'll go to the vote on the amendment. All in favor of Councillor Carr's strike and replace amendment? All opposed. It is opposed by Councillor Reimer, Mayor Robertson, Councillor Deal, Councillor Stevenson, Councillor Jang, Councillor Meggs. So it is defeated. We're back to the main queue. Councillor Carr, you will have most of your 5 minutes.
Yes. Thanks, Madam Chair. I would like you to sever the motion. Actually, you can just sever the motion at the time that we have the vote. I really am disappointed, and I'm disappointed because I think despite the breadth of engagement and outreach that our staff have done in the planning process, and there has been considerable breadth of outreach, the people are upset. And I think we need to recognize that at this council table. And I don't think that we should say to them over and over, look, we've really done outreach. If they're upset, we need to try and figure out why they're upset, listen to them, and modify what we're doing in order to respond to that. In some cases, there has been modification done by the mayor in this motion that I think does reflect that. Certainly, area 2, the one area in and not referring it into the Candy Corridor plan, instead creating it as a single-family zone again. I think that is a response that reflects the concern that came forward at this table. But what is missing in the motion as it stands in its amendments is a recognition that people want a different kind of planning process than we have been giving them. That has come through speaker after speaker, email after email, meeting after meeting. They do not feel that there has been a truly collaborative process, that there has been a sharing of information back and forth in a way that is genuinely collaborative and leads to a consideration of some of the ideas and feedback from survey forms and a review of that, and then a response back and back and forth that leads to a feeling that the plan in its draft form has been jointly produced by the people who live in the area and our planning department. And that's what people want. They want that. That is what they are telling us they want over and over. So, my amendments around extending time were to enable us, and enable in particular our planning staff, to work with the communities towards that goal that they have said is so important. They have said in council is broken. And that is simply, it's simply got to be the driver for what we passed tonight. As a consequence, because there hasn't been the attention paid in this motion to changing the terms of reference, maybe it's not the terms of reference entirely, but changing the way in which we collaborate with the community, including offering the community, as we did in previous city plan community vision processes, a chance for the community to be able to sign off on the issues, to be able to actually vote, in essence, to let us know if it's acceptable or not. Without that there, I cannot support the motion as it's being presented. There's a piece I can support, but in general, I really feel that we're not doing the job we need to do to incorporate the citizens' deep concerns over wanting a process that more actively engages them to come to fruition.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Reimer.
I don't know how we enable staff by a wholesale rejection of their recommendations. I do have a great deal of respect for staff and their professional abilities, as well as their on the ground. That more than any of us, a voice on the last few days regarding consultation. Compared to the last two plans, the two we inherited the processes of, Mount Pleasant and West Point Grey, vastly improved and exceeds them on when we ask staff to go further on it. But it also, the quality of consultation goes much further. The fact that we're hearing from people across much broader demographics, maybe not over the last few days, but in general, based on the report presented by staff. And we've had a very deep and meaningful engagement with the Downtown East Side local area planning process. I think that's well evidenced by the speakers who came. However, compared to where I'd like to go, still a challenge. In these four communities, the minimum number of renters is 57%, and the was up over 80%, and yet only 2 speakers in the last few days have been renters, and not nearly those numbers coming out in the consultation processes still. And that, it continues to gravely concern me, especially as we see the number of renters dropping in the city because we aren't building rental housing because we can't seem to enable their voice in these planning processes. So the second most common theme I heard was the urgent need, and that was expressed in a number of ways, from rental housing to the concerns we heard in the Downtown East Side to the concerns we heard in Marpole about their urgent desire to secure their tenure over their single-family area. So it came in a variety of forms, and I do think staff has done an exemplary job of balancing off those urgent needs against the need, as Councillor Carr said, to continue to broaden the consultation, but also deepen it and continue to build trust in the community. I'm not going to go through each plan because I think I did in the amendment discussion, but I did want to say the Downtown East Side was, which I'm the liaison to, so I feel compelled to give it a voice here, especially since Councillor Tang can't be here as the co-liaison. Ray Spexman described it as a miracle, and I know I discounted it at the time as maybe not being a miracle, but it is a bit of a miracle to see that process come to the stage, to be, a few months away from conclusion at this point. It actually, it's not a miracle, but it is of hard work, a ridiculous amount of good intention, and a whole lot of listening by people from very different positions. And I think if the Downtown East Side can achieve that, there's no reason, under the current planning process and structures in terms of reference, there's absolutely no reason in my mind that the other 3 communities can't. But it does take a lot of hands-on work from staff, a lot of hands-on work from the councillor liaison, and those 3 ingredients that I heard about. So I think as councillors and as staff, it becomes our duty to really hold the space for that good intention and to not work actively to undermine each other in those efforts. So it's a commitment I make on the other 3 plans. I clearly, obviously, have been very invested in Grandview Woodlands, but also in the West End, the former West End Mayor's Advisory Council member, and I've learned a lot more about Marpole over the last few days and last few months, and very much committed to seeing a pathway forward for that community where they feel excited about Down East Side like it does right now.
Thank you very much, Councillor Reimer. Councillor Affleck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's Friday night. I want to keep you guys here a little longer. I've submitted an amendment to the motion, the recommendations. There are 2 things I've added. Basically,
Councillor Affleck, I'm going to move us to an amendment queue.
Sorry, yes.
Still have to hit your button again. There you go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The 2 amendments that I've added, I've along the lines of what Councillor Carr is saying. I think we have a challenge here, and certainly in Marpole, where and as a liaison, it's saddening and sad to see what's happened over the last few months in Marpole and the anger that exists across that community. And I think there's a desire in that community that we heard this week and we've been hearing for the last few months to take a step back and let's look at how we can do this better. What I proposed here in replacing D is really somewhat very similar to what we're offering Grandview Woodland. I don't see why we can offer Marpole, who are just as upset as Grandview Woodland were just a couple of months ago, the same things that we're offering Grandview Woodland. It's the same basic structure that we're offering Grandview Woodland, creating the Citizens Assembly and sending staff back to do further research and do more planning on each area. And then come back, and then there's a budget set aside, very similar budget that we have set aside for Grandview Woodland. So it's not unlike Grandview Woodland. I think it's respectful for us to provide the people of Marpole who are clearly upset. We can see this week that they're clearly upset. They turned out in droves here in council and made their message clear to us. And so I think a reset button on Marpole specifically is crucial. I think we need buy-in down there. It's a great community. It's a really tight community. The neighbors are very, very close to each other. They always have been, and I don't think we should respect that. I've also added a G. I think there's been a lot of stuff that was brought up in the last few days regarding what is this Citizens Assembly. So given that I've proposed a Citizens Assembly for Marpole, that would mean two Citizens Assemblies. Reference to the membership makeup of that. I would like us to have a report back from staff at the next council meeting on October 10th, just to define the makeup of that and how it would operate, so that we can have a discussion about that publicly, so that there's a clear understanding of what that Citizens Assembly will look like, and assure the citizens of those neighborhoods that is something that's going to help them and move them forward. So those are my amendments. I hope I can get your support on them. I think they meet the needs that we've heard from those communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Affleck. Councillor Meggs.
Well, I don't suppose, because I think the issues are so different from Grandview Woodlands to Marpole, and I listened closely to what people from Marpole said, and the fundamental concern, and it was very graphically illustrated by the map that showed where petitioners were living, was that there would be some kind of change of zoning in single-family areas, and Mr. Jackson's indicated quite clearly that won't be the case. So there's no need to go down to continue the turmoil in Marpole, because the staff are recommending to make the change, indicated was a critical one for people who were intervening on the Marpole plan. So I don't think there's any reason to continue down this road. It's fundamentally different from the Grandview Woodlands situation. So I think this is inappropriate.
Thank you, Councillor Meggs. Councillor Jang.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I do appreciate what Councillor Affleck is trying to do. But it was very interesting. I actually had asked Mike Burdick and Albert Leung if they actually wanted this. I had a meeting with them on the Friday, and I said to them, okay, we talked about meaningful consultation, and I asked them point blank, and Councillor Reimer was with me, what constitutes meaningful consultation to you? I said, would you like something like what we proposed for Grandview Woodlands? And they actually said, no, we're not sure about that. We kind of liked how the West End plan kind of developed. That was kind of a nice model for us because it was more information and things like that. But one thing that really came out about, and I do have the emails for this still, is that what they wanted to make sure was that what plan and the consultation method they come up with that will be used in Marpole. They wanted it very clearly to be developed with our staff. So it's worked out together how the best way to share information and do the consultation. And the one thing they didn't want, and this is what Councillor Affleck's amendment is doing, is to be dictated to. Now you're saying we have to have a Citizens Assembly? They didn't want that. Well, maybe some do, maybe some don't, but they wanted to be engaged in the very process of coming up with that from the bottom up. What this motion does, this amendment does, is actually impose what they didn't want, which was a top-down approach. And for that very reason, I'm not going to support it, because I heard very clearly when my meetings from Marpole members, specifically Mike Burdick and Albert Leung, that this is not what they wanted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jang. Councillor Ball.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. I'll be supporting this amendment just simply because we heard from so many people in the Marpole community that they did full consultation. They had various ideas of what it might be, but they certainly did want to have more time, and they wanted to have enough time to be able to consult, to work with the staff, to work with all the members of the community, and they certainly did not want to be divided. And I do not think by simply declaring the single-family zone is going to be enough to fully explain the plan as it's going forward. There's a great deal of pain and angst in the entire community, and I think it behooves us to allow the time to play out to be able to have the plan done properly.
Thank you, Councillor Carr.
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair. Although I totally understand the incentive and the motivation for Councillor Affleck to put forward this particular amendment, I find myself not able to vote for it at this point because I haven't heard the community in Marpole say that they wanted a citizens' assembly. So I can't confirm whether or not that is what they want. I don't know. I feel unable to vote on something where I don't know what the community wants, because I think it's so important that we take our direction from what the community wants. So as I say, I'm sympathetic to the idea of equity, and I support the idea of equity amongst the communities. I absolutely agree with Councillor Affleck that the people in Marpole are not just upset about one area that has been called Area 2 on a map of single-family homes, and create it back into single-family homes and within the Marpole planning area instead of putting it into the plan for the Canby corridor. I understand that their concerns are much broader, and they talked about, well, there still are single-family home areas that are being rezoned under this. There are densities that they don't agree with along Granville. They specifically mentioned, and in other areas. There are concerns around services and all sorts of things that need the extended plan and that need broader citizen engagement. Those pieces said clearly, but I won't vote for this particular motion because I'm unable to assess the community support for it.
Councillor Carr, I'll have my own brief comments to this one. I won't be supporting the amendment as one of the two liaisons to Marpole. I know that Councillor Affleck went to a number of the events out there as well, and I was on walking tours and events at the theater and the park and storefronts at the community centers, and I heard a lot of people very, very engaged in conversations about so much more than density. Density absolutely thing that gets people most, I think, concerned and activated. But they were talking about parks, they were talking about amenities, they were talking about street trees, they were talking about protecting some of the lower cost housing between 70th and Marine. They were talking about all these things, and they're all issues of concern and interest to that neighborhood. When the tone changed was when two things happened. One was people got really concerned in that one section that we saw so clearly outlined on those petition responses, the people who signed those petitions and the survey response. I've never seen clustering like that of responses in a very specific neighborhood. And indeed, we were treating that neighborhood differently because it is covered by more than one plan area. Mayor Robertson's amendment or motion addresses that concern. And the other concerns that I heard, and the fear and the anger, really concerning to hear it, was based on a lot of misinformation. And that needs to be, we need to get out there and talk to people about what is actually going to happen in their neighborhood and how long it might take, and the fact that they have a current community plan which proposed changes, and they've been living under one. It's very, very old now. So it's a process that each neighborhood has, and to talk about what the impacts that they can expect are. Because I think that the fact that there's some misinformation out there has been causing a lot of fear and angst, and that's unfortunate. I think that Mayor Robertson's motion takes care of the time and the extra work that's going to need to be done to have those conversations, and bringing in Area 2 back into the Marpole process as single-family area, I think addresses that very specific concern, which raised so much angst in the neighborhood. I think this would be Robertson's motion, and I will not be supporting this amendment. I see nobody else on the queue for the amendment, so all those in favor of Councillor Affleck's amendment? Opposed? Councillor Carr, Meggs, Jang, Deal, Mayor Robertson, and Councillor Reimer. Opposed? It does not pass. Now I'll go back to the main queue again. Councillor Affleck, you've still got your time to the main motion if you want.
would want to citizens incentives, so I'm surprised that Councillor Carr did not hear that. I was a little confused by what Councillor Jang said about dictatorships and citizens.
Point of order, Councillor Jang.
Yeah, you did. I think you said dictatorship. Okay, top-down approach. So it just concerns me. I'm not quite sure what he was getting at. I understand Councillor Carr has already asked for severing of the recommendations, which I would appreciate as well. You know, going through them with A and B with regards to the downtown east side, I think that the extension, I appreciate the mayor's extension on that. I think the neighborhood would like a little bit longer. But I'm hopeful that Councillor Reimer and Councillor Tang, as the liaisons, will be able to assist the board in ensuring that they feel comfortable with all the information and are able to digest it all and then support the plan moving forward. So I'll be supporting A and B. We see very clearly from and Councillor Carr, who's been very engaged in West End, I get a sense that they want more time, and we're not giving them more time. And I think it's important for us to, the neighborhood does come out. They are asking for more time. I don't see why we cannot give them some more time, but that's not happening. So I think that it's unfortunate, and I think it's a bit rushed on that one. With D, while I appreciate the mayor's amendments, I do think that the Marpole plan is in trouble and needs a reset, and I'm not confident, yet hopeful, but worried, and all those other things that they're not providing Marpole with what it needs in order to have a plan that they will get behind. And I don't think the amendments that the mayor has made will do the trick, I'm afraid. You know, we'll see, and I will remain hopeful, and I'll be staying engaged with that community, but I can't support the mayor's this, and I can't support moving forward in this respect. But, you know, obviously, if it passes, I will be committed to my job and working with the community. With regards to the Granby Woodland, I think it's good that we were able to provide them with more time, and I wish we could have done the same for the other plans. I find it curious why we've put Granby Woodland and given it such special treatment. It's interesting, but we shall see when that report comes back, and I hope there's engagement there and positive feedback from the community. With regards to the mayor's addition on F with the height for the Garden Kettle thing, I think I'm concerned about that. It's a bit too prescriptive for staff, that it provides too much. It hasn't been able to, much like what Councillor Carr was saying about my amendments. I feel that I'm not sure if the entire community wants this or doesn't want this. I think that this should be part of the process, and if that became part of the plan, then that would be part of the plan. We would vote that. Agree with it or not agree with it. So I feel for today this is much too prescriptive, especially given all the conversations we've been having and telling the public not to get into details to this process. This feels like we're providing specific criteria about one project. I think that's not what we're supposed to be doing here today, and so I can't support that. So a bit of a mishmash of support and no support on working hard there, and Mr. Jackson is committed to getting the neighbors behind all these plans, so I look forward to hearing back on that and seeing the public hearings move forward. Thank you very much.
Councillor Affleck, Councillor Meigs.
Thanks very much, Madam Chair. I'll try to be brief, but I want to reflect a little bit on what I perceive to be the bigger picture here, which is that we're really moving into in the life of the city. The NPA's attempts at citywide rezonings and that kind of thing blew up in their face, caused serious problems for the administration of Sam Sullivan. And so there was a strong call for the revival of community planning as soon as Mayor Robertson took office. And a lot of concern about the so-called spot rezonings, which, as staff has shown us, are at a lower level than you would think from the amount of controversy that attends some of them. The vast majority of city approvals are going through the regular development permit process, something that our staff don't get much credit for, but it's within the existing plans and zoning arrangements. But we're working in many areas of the city under 20-year-old vision documents, which are simply not providing the framework necessary for the current situation where we see development pressure moving into neighborhoods. And they're not aligned with our requirement for more affordability. They're not supporting the kind of transit development we'd like to see. We've seen some of our neighborhoods with declining business districts and a number of other issues that necessitated, I think, a real renewal of our community planning process. And so what's been happening here in response to community calls is a dramatic increase in the amount of support and engagement at the community level. And, the fact that we're doing twice as many plans as we're historically done and trying to do them faster is in response to community pressure. And I think that staff need to be commended for the progress that we have made. We had 80 names on the speakers list many times over the years from various community visiting committees who are deeply engaged in this stuff and have been back for 20 years. I think that the staff recommendations, as amended by Mayor Robertson, really reflect the diversity of strategies that are necessary here. But two of the plans are substantially complete and ready to go. A third one, I think, is very close. And the Grandview Woodlands one, because of the special issues there, which staff have acknowledged and so has the community, is going to take more time and maybe some special tools. It shouldn't be lost sight of, I think, that in Grandview Woodlands we have one of the most important transit nodes in the entire region, and that's going to take special attention. And I do feel that people in Grandview Woodlands maybe had missed the point that there's vastly more density at a whole number of largely residential SkyTrain stations in Burnaby than there is at Commercial and Broadway, where we see tremendous pressure from buses and so on. So I think if we didn't move ahead in Grandview Woodlands, there would have been a demand for us to do so, and in fact there was that demand. Now we're seeing there's specific issues that have to be dealt with. So I think that the proposal before us responds to what we've been hearing from the community. It's not overriding it. I was struck by how few of the speakers dealt specifically with the staff recommendations and focused on some of the outstanding concerns they have for their neighborhoods, and fair enough. But the staff recommendations, I think, will give plenty of opportunity and latitude to deal with those issues. It gives more time when the communities aren't ready to finalize, and it responds to, I think, a real call right across the city for more emphasis on transit-oriented development, more affordable housing options, and that kind of flexibility. With this appeal to community leaders, not just in these four areas but elsewhere, to take a look at what's going on in our city and work with the city in a collaborative way, and not simply be responsive to news that's coming from staff as if staff are somehow dreaming up terrible events to communicate to the neighborhood. These environment to be respected, and the community documents are not responsive enough to some of those realities. And I think that as we go forward, larger city, we're going to need to see each community sit down and say, okay, we're all in this together. How is our community going to be able to contribute to the success of the larger city? I feel sometimes that there's a stop the world, I want to get off tone in some of the discourse we hear around community planning, and it's not going to serve those neighborhoods well or the city down the road if we're not able to see each community as part of the larger picture. So I support this. I look forward to seeing the reports of them, and I think the timing deadlines and the content of these recommendations is excellent. I thank the staff for all the time that business.
Perfectly timed. Councillor Meggs. Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. I would also just like to acknowledge the tremendous amount of work that's been done by all the volunteers who came in to speak to us, and almost every volunteer who came in who had participated in their neighborhood. And again, they're the reason why Vancouver is successful, is because of the contributions of our citizens and what they've brought to the life here in Vancouver, is that everyone who came in just said they wanted to be acknowledged, they wanted their ideas to be acknowledged, they wanted to work collaboratively with the city, but more importantly, time to be able to do it properly. And working with our staff on some of the projects, I was able to see a real new hope in Grandview Woodland, and delighted to see the extension of time, because I think that process that began that day and the spirit that began that day could continue with, as Councillor would be able to come together and move forward in a spirit of cooperation. I also feel that when you separate out a community and go, you can have this, but the rest of you, well, you can't, sets up an imbalance of feeling in the community, and I don't think that is helpful to the process that we, certainly the NPA wants to be successful, and I once again really appreciate all the work that staff have done, because witnessing their commitment and having it matched by our community leaders is what will make our city even more successful.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Councillor Jang.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And once again, my thanks to everybody who came to speak. It was fascinating listening to everybody, and I have lots of notes written down, and of course to our staff who've been toiling away and working very hard for many years on some of these plans. It hasn't been easy, that's for sure. You know, it's interesting. One of the familiar refrains, and I see this in the media see this in the media, says that City Hall doesn't listen. City Hall doesn't listen. We keep hearing this. And I reflect back, I think the reason for these community plans is because people were scared about the spot rezonings that were happening in the West End and Marpole, Grandview Woodlands, and all these other places. And so we responded. We actually listened and said, okay, let's get some community plans started. And off we went. And it worked away. And some of them get further than others, and everybody has all these different ideas. And now that we've seen with some of the plans, sort of the first pass or the first kind of round of ideas, people weren't too happy about some. And what I'm sensing now is that there's a little difference in the way the world is. Just as when VCRs first came, my parents gave me the remote and said, figure out how to use this for me. It's the same thing with sort of how we consult and talk to and communicate now. It has changed a bit. Well, actually, I think they're thankful that we listened to them at that point. Now they want us to listen to about how we actually communicate and talk and consult. And one thing that was very clear is that the world has changed. It's got to be different now. The Engaged City Task Force is working on those types of ideas, but also the very fact every neighborhood is very different. The Downtown East Side plan and how we had to address that one is very different from Marpole. I mean, I have my notes here from my meetings with the Marpole folks, and they said, you don't necessarily want that, and you have different ways of doing things. We have we'd like to have more question and answer, the West End model, facilitated discussion. That's what they said, what they wanted, and this was confirmed back and forth as notes from my discussions with some of the leaders in the Marpole community. Same with Grandview Woodlands, very different community, very different way of doing community engagement, and so the model proposed here seems to work well for them, and so on and so forth. So what I'm trying to say is that the other element now is that not only do we have to change the way we communicate with neighborhoods and fix it, and not fix it, but find different ways. Because clearly we heard there are many ways that we use are still working, but there's some other ways that can be developed and whatnot. But how words can actually hurt or upend some of these good attempts by our staff. Just now we heard, when I talked about what Marpole wanted was described as a dictatorship. I never used the word. I think I used the words facilitative. What they wanted to do was they didn't want a process imposed upon them. I never once said that a community citizens assembly was a dictatorship, but rather they didn't want something imposed on them. They wanted to work with our staff to create that, and that's the space we're giving them. And that's what I think the staff recommendations and Mayor Robertson's amendments is doing very well. And I think it's also very important that we are really diligent and really vigilant about how misinformation starts. I'm not blaming it, saying people from various political parties down at the rallies, marching around and doing their thing. We have to get that out of the planning process. It's all about doing the right thing and make sure that we reflect the residents, not political parties, but the residents' needs and wants. So with that, I'm very happy to support the staff motion and Mayor Robertson's amendments. And I want to thank everybody, in particular our planning staff, who have been much maligned over the last little while. I don't think they deserve it at all. They've done a fantastic job, and I'm very proud to be working with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jang. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chair. Let me also start by saying I do certainly appreciate the number of people who came in to speak to us, and many who had to wait a very long time, in fact, to be able to speak to us. These hearings are really difficult because they're set for a certain time, and to speak to us. Also, I want to thank the staff, particularly for the work that's been done in these 4 plans. And there's been much discussed, I think, that the staff report and that which has been added by the mayor is certainly the best way to go and have count of various people's. I'm particularly pleased that the West End is going ahead. A long time I've been trying to get a plan in the West End for many years now, and finally it's years of experience. He has never seen so much consultation. He said that at the beginning. In 34 years, he has never seen such consultation. Not just here, but other municipalities. I get frustrated with, I must say, with the opposition's perspective. I just simply feel it's playing to some audience somewhere that they're hoping to. They have told us they have put their best forward. They have told us that now they can incorporate some new ideas. And I just, for the life of me, can't understand how one just turns around and says, no, I want to rip up that check. Here's the one that I'm going to write, and it's all the professional training has to. I reject that completely and utterly. And I go back to the staff report, and I'm grateful for the additions that the mayor has added, particularly in terms of the kettle. I think we really need to respond to that. I've certainly had emails where people are very concerned what's going to happen there, and so I think we've dealt with that. And in finishing, let me just say I'm amazed at how well this went in the West End, and that's because of the work that the staff did in the West End. They practically blanketed the West End with meetings and public meetings, and had to take a fair amount of abuse. And some of it wasn't at all appropriate in any way, shape, or form, and they took it gracefully and acted as professionals and just kept going back into the West End and dealing with every possible group.
You're at your 5.
And thus we have what we have today. Only 2 people from the West End come out to speak, in spite of what Councillor Carr says, that 200 didn't produce 1 person to come.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Point of order, Councillor Carr, what's your point of order?
Could you please instruct members of council regarding the fact we are not government and opposition? At this council table, we are 10 equally elected.
That's a personal opinion. Councillor Chair, that's a personal opinion. I reserve the right to
Labeling is not
opposition.
allowed.
There's nothing illegal about it or inappropriate. It's been used in this council chamber for years.
I think we'll leave it at that and move on. I'm going to make my comments now. There is no such thing. And you've made your point, and it has been heard here. There's no such thing as a point of privilege.
Should have asked before. Oops, I'm not.
What is your, go ahead, tell me what you think you...
Question regarding, and I'm asking for...
More speakers before this vote, by the way. It's myself and the mayor.
Then I can ask it before we vote, that's fine. You can continue and I'll ask.
Okay, I'm going to speak myself for a few minutes before we go to the mayor for his closing comments. Actually, Councilor Carr, since you've already raised it, just why don't you do it now so that we...
Yes, I really am seeking direction on whether or not it's possible for us to vote to direct staff to work on a development proposal. I have never seen that before in my time on council, and I'm wondering if it's appropriate for council to be directing staff to work with particular groups around a particular proposal that also
things that they always do. As usual. Point of order, Councillor Reimer. Sorry.
Society, Bothell Properties, other potential, and community to explore development options, not to create a proposal, Councillor Carr. So you are right that our job is not to direct staff to create one proposal, but rather to give us a range of options so that they can be informed of the next steps.
Sorry, but the way the wording is options for a proposal. Options
Yes,
for
right.
the commercial and vendables
I
proposal.
can read, I have it in front of me, so I can read what you're saying. But the point isn't to develop the proposal, it's to develop options for the proposal.
So we've had that answered. It is appropriate.
Yeah.
Maybe
Could clarify that policy reports that describe options are fairly common.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of council, Mr. Mayor, it was fairly routine for us to work with the policies described in the motion there towards preparing options for a development proposal. That's a pretty ordinary piece of work for us to undertake.
Okay, asked and answered. Thank you very much. I'm going to move on with my comments now. Before we go to the mayor for his closing comments. I want to thank everybody involved and everyone else has as well, but I also wanted to thank the community for the enormous number of participant contacts that have been established throughout the city. We reached out to more people than we ever have before with this process. Is there room for improvement? Absolutely. It's still frustrating, I think, for all of us to see and to, in fact, hear reflected back to us the concept that if you have a group of people in a room, that those people in that room actually reflect the community. And I think we all know that that doesn't reflect the community. It reflects this group of people who have the knowledge, the time, the interest, to come out to those meetings. And I'm so keen on trying to find more ways to reach the people who don't come out into those rooms. And I think that with the Engaged City Task Force and other processes here at the city on doing everything she can to improve our processes so that we do find those people who don't find their way into those big rooms until perhaps they're driven by fear. And that's the other thing I just wanted to mention is that when the larger groups come out, it's often driven by fear. And that's to me, it means that we have work to do to get them out because they're excited about their community and they really want to make sure that their voice is heard. Misinformation that leads them to believe that there's a real threat to their life, their lifestyle and their home, which is very unfortunate. But I also wanted to say that I think that the mayor's motion has done a really good job of walking a very fine line between recognizing the work that those communities have already done and recognizing the need for more work. And I don't think that's something we've really acknowledged as much here, is that where we are today is not a place that was just gotten to randomly in this room today over the last 3 days. This represents a year and a half in 3 cases and more in another. People meeting in their neighborhoods, going for walking tours, going to the gyms, and talking in large groups and putting Post-it notes on boards and drawing lines. Those boards are actually quite astounding to see how much information and input there was that far back on these different plans. And it involves good walking tours, and it involves the creative theatrical ways that some of the information was shared. And that work can't just be thrown away. We need to acknowledge and work with that information that's already been gathered, with that process that's already been undertaken, and with all those people, thousands of people who have come out and already had their voices in this process. So we need to acknowledge that. We need to respect that work that's already been done and move forward from here as opposed to wiping that off the map and starting anew. I believe that the mayor's motion has done this extremely well, acknowledging the work that's already done and acknowledging the places where we need to do more work to ensure that we are hearing voices appropriately and that we are have been established. We were established a long time ago. They're old plans, and we're a very young city. We're changing rapidly. We're facing challenges that nobody would have anticipated then. It was the challenges of stop it. The challenges of climate change, challenges of more people moving here than might have been anticipated, the challenges of rising land prices far and beyond what we could have anticipated. And those challenges need to be met, and they need to be met and shared throughout the city. And these new city plans are attempting to take the work that's been done in the past and add these new challenges and opportunities to that. That's all I really need to add to what's already been said. Thank you, Mayor Robertson, for your work on this, and thank you to the staff. I watched some of what transpired at some of those large meetings, and it was not easy for anybody in the room. Participants, staff, ourselves alike. So thank you for all of your work, and I look forward to supporting the mayor's motion. Mayor Robertson.
I think there's a lot of words have been said over the past several days, and certainly in this debate over the final motion. We've come a long way in these past few years on the community plans. There have been countless volunteer hours, incredibly hard work by our staff, and I think we're at a point where we should be pleased with the work done and the amount of consensus that is before us. I think it's unfortunate that some councillors are focused on the fear side of this. I think it's really unfortunate that some people have been fear-mongering in the neighborhoods and misleading residents with false information. People are busy and working hard and don't always have time to be deeply involved in the planning meetings. So when they get alarming that undermines a lot of the good work that's being done. My motion relies on the consensus that has been built in these 4 neighborhoods to date, with great guidance from our staff, who as I said, have been there for every minute of it. I think it's completely worthy of support. Voting against it really negates the consensus from almost 400 community meetings. It negates the professional advice of our staff. Against it, I think really negates the many voices of the people in these 4 neighborhoods, almost 25,000 people that were involved. Some are upset, but I believe many people support this work. I'd say many Vancouverites are upset about the lack of affordability. Many Vancouverites are upset about the lack of community plans when their neighborhood is facing growth pressure. But I'm convinced that building an affordable city, one that has housing options for everyone, does not have to come at the expense of single-family neighborhoods or the great character of our neighborhoods. I think the ideas that have been brought forward through the almost 400 meetings and tens of thousands of residents will get us there. I think we've got some good next steps, recognizing a lot of valuable work has been done. There's more work to do on all of these plans, but we're close with some, and we really need to roll up our sleeves in the others. But good to see it tracking well, considering the volume of work and the difficulty in doing this work in this day and age in Vancouver. So thanks to everyone who's put so much into it to date, and we'll look forward to successful outcomes from all 4 of these community plans.
Thank you, Mayor Robertson. The vote will sever A, B, C, D, E, and what do we have? How many? Yeah, there is an F. Okay. So all in favor of A? Unanimously. All in favor of C? Any opposed? Opposed by Councilors Affleck, Ball, and Carr. That was C, right? Okay. All in favor of D? Any opposed? Affleck, Ball, and Carr are opposed to D. All in favor of E? Any opposed? Councilor Carr is opposed. All in favor of F? Any opposed? Councilor Affleck, Ball, and Carr are opposed to F. That concludes the business. All A through F have passed. Thank you very much, everybody. I think I've got to pass this to the mayor now. The standing committee portion of the meeting is now complete. We'll now go into the regular council meeting. Mr. Mayor.
We will now reconvene in regular council to deal with the recommendations and actions of the standing committee on city finance and services meeting of September 25th and 26th, and today for item 1. Madam Clerk, may we have the roll call, please?
Yes, all members of council are present except for Councillor Louie and Councillor Tang. You have a quorum, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We need a motion to adopt the standing committee's recommendation for item 1. Councillor Stevenson moves, Councillor Jang seconds. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that carries unanimously. We need a motion to adjourn. And seconder, moved by Councillor Stevenson, seconded by Councillor Reimer. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that carries. And this meeting is adjourned. 7:45.
This is full 5 minutes.